Welcome to Meet Your Developers for HCL Nomad. We appreciate your interest in joining this session for Nomad. We have a good group of Nomad developers here in this session and a good amount of content that we want to share with you. So we're going to first discuss Nomad Mobile, and then we're going to discuss, of course, Nomad Web. In the end, we'll make sure that there's ample time for Q&A. So without further ado, let's do some introductions. My name is Max Sutton. I'm the technical lead for HCL Nomad on iOS, and presenting with me is Doug. Doug, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Doug Conley, and I'm the lead for the Nomad project and focus on the Nomad Web project.
Cool. So next slide. So when we talk about Nomad, it's important for us to discuss what Nomad is. Nomad is a client that runs your domino applications. It's pretty much as simple as that. What's unique about Nomad is it runs in the mobile space, so it runs your domino applications on iOS or Android and soon on web. You can expect Nomad supports all of your app formula and Lotus script. Local replication is there, and Nomad is working great for you. There is a few limitations, and as simple as that is Java cannot be executed within domino applications running within Nomad. But essentially, Nomad is a client for your domino applications. Next slide. And so we do want to talk about the availability of the Nomad client. We've really been on a journey here. We started with iOS. Like if you could just tap through this 4 times. We started on iOS with the tablets. We released that April 2019. Followed that soon with support for Android with the Android tablet in December 2019. Following shortly after that was the support for the phone form factors with the iPhone and the Android phone. On iOS, if you want to run Nomad, you need to make sure that your device supports iOS 11.4 or higher. On Android, your Android device needs to support Android version 8 or higher, and it also needs to be a device that's on a 64-bit architecture. We're continuing this journey with Nomad Web. Doug, if you could talk to what we can expect.
Sure. So we're about to embark on a private beta just next week. That list is closed, but we'll be following it up closely in mid-December with a open beta. We're going to be hosting Nomad Web to make it easy for you to kick the tires. And then in mid-January, we plan on opening the beta up more for you to install Nomad Web in your local environments or your test environments to test it further. And then we'll be shipping it when it's ready. Next.
Very cool. So next slide, please. All right. When we're talking about Nomad, we do want to discuss our management stories. The primary way really to manage HCL Nomad is using Pan-Agenda Marvel Client. If you're already using Marvel Clients to manage your desktop clients, it's very easy to extend those configurations to the Nomad mobile devices. It comes built in with HCL Nomad so that you can rest assured that your configurations are going to be configured within the Nomad client from the very first launch. If you don't know Marvel Client, it can manage all sorts of concepts within Nomad and notes, like recent apps, local replicas, connection documents, and a whole lot more. And so definitely check out Marvel Client. So you can go to the next slide. Of course, because we do operate in the mobile space, we do need to support an MDM. So on iOS today, all of your favorite MDMs will be supported via our app config definition. You can manage certain things like basic settings, so deployment settings, so that you can configure Domino server hostname, username. You can make it very easy for your end user to configure the Nomad client this way. You can also configure event settings and also data loss prevention settings using an MDM. Note on the data loss prevention settings, those settings are also available via Marvel Client. There is the support will be coming soon on Android. It's not quite ready yet, but we are working on it. Next slide. So we want to discuss a little bit of the new features that we've been working on for mobile. So Doug, you go to the next slide here. The first one is biometric authentication. So this is a feature I'm very excited to talk to you about. Biometric authentication allows you to securely and very simply unlock your Notes ID just by using biometrics instead of using your password. So on iOS, this means that you can use either Face ID or Touch ID, and this feature is backed by the device passcode. As you can see, this is if you look at the screenshot on the bottom of this slide, this was an issue that was highly voted in our AHA Ideas product portal, and something that we wanted to make sure that we got out to you. So it's available today on iOS with version 109, and this feature will be following up soon and be available on Android as well. There is an administrator setting. If you're an administrator and you do not want your users to use biometric authentication for whatever reason, you can disable this setting. This is enable biometric setup. This is available via mobile client and MDM. And if you set this to false, then your end users will no longer have a path in which they can enable the feature. So next slide. So we do want to do a quick demo of biometric authentication and show you how it works and how nice and easy it is to use. So Doug, if you could stop presenting and next we'll share. I don't know if Brian needs to set that. Okay. Okay, so I am presenting an iPad here. This is a iPad Pro, and it supports Face ID. You can see here I have my homepage up, and I have my Nomad application icon there. So first, let's just tap this icon and do our first launch of HCL Nomad. As you can see, whenever you do your first launch, you do get challenged for your Notes ID password. This is the traditional Notes ID challenge that is required in order to unlock the Notes ID and to then gain access to the application. What's new with biometric authentication is that now that because my device has a passcode set and has Face ID enabled, I can now type in a password here and tap this new option that's available, enable Face ID, and enable the feature. So let me do that now. Okay, so I just entered my password, and now I'm going to tap enable Face ID. The first thing that we see is a prompt that asks the user if HCL Nomad has permission to utilize Face ID. We want to give them permission, so we'll tap OK. And you'll see very quickly the Face ID prompt appears. It tells us that the device is scanning our face for ID, and the client quickly unlocks, and now we have access to HCL Nomad, and we can open our applications. So that's what it's like to enable the feature. Let's see what it looks like and see how easy it is to use when you go back again to the first launch. So launching HCL Nomad, it's going to scan my face, and really within a second, you'll see the Nomad client has fully initialized. Our Notes ID has been unlocked using biometric authentication. So that's it for this demo. We just wanted to share with you that this is available today on iOS and how nice and easy it is to use. All right. So let me stop sharing here, and we'll return back to the slide deck.
Okay.
And you can skip through that slide. That's just a backup demo. And one more. Okay, so we also want to discuss some changes that we're making in Designer V12 to allow Domino application developers to start building more responsive applications with Nomad in mind. There's some very powerful features that we're introducing in V12 here. And so, oh,
sorry,
lost the slide. It's okay. So let's discuss them here. So two new at formula language functions, at resolution width and at resolution height. These return the current Notes UI document resolution width and height in Notes pixels. So you will now be able to easily know the resolution of the application window that your application is rendering into. So this can be very powerful to use. You can think about how you would use this in high-win formulas, for an example. A note on notes pixels. Notes pixels are consistent between the platforms, so you can expect that 500 notes pixels on a desktop client is rendering the same amount of notes content as 500 notes pixels on an iPhone. And so in addition to those formula language functions, there is a new at command relayout window. This command is going to invoke a relayout of the application window. So one of the main things it does in that relayout process is it reevaluates all of your high-win formulas. So you can start to imagine how you can now start to build some responsiveness using a relayout window command and also knowing the resolution of the application window. The story really fully rounds out here when we start to discuss the new form view event for resolution change. So this is a new event that is triggered whenever your application window resolution changes. So on mobile, what that means is when you change the orientation of the device, let's say we're changing from landscape to portrait, you would have these events trigger because the resolution is changing. And based off of these events, you could then execute the at command relayout window, and that's going to cause a reevaluation of your high-win formulas. And if you're using the at resolution width and height, all of a sudden you have responsiveness built into the application. So as you go from landscape to portrait, you could see a view column disappear, for example, because now you have limited width and you want fewer view columns. These are some features that we're really looking forward to releasing in Designer V12, and we think the Domino application developers can do a whole lot with them. And then with that, Doug, I believe we will pass it on to you and start discussing the Nomad Proxy.
Okay. So the Nomad Proxy allows both allows iOS, Android, as well as the future Nomad web client to connect to Domino servers. So it tunnels WSS NRPC traffic over a WSS channel to the proxy and then to the Domino servers. Those servers, one of the choices we made here technically is by having the Nomad web proxy is we can support servers without requiring them to be upgraded to a newer version to support these connections. So as you can see here in the further detail that I just described, any of the Nomad clients are coming in over 443, tunneling the NRPC traffic, which then gets terminated on a Domino server. The NRPC traffic is encrypted end-to-end, as well as it's tunneled over a TLS that's encrypted as well. So when a traditional setup requires a user to identify themselves, their Domino server, and how to connect to that server. The Nomad Proxy simplifies that. Knowing the name of the proxy, all of the rest of the setup happens automatically. Okay, and that on iOS, Android, it'll prompt for the proxy. On Nomad Web, we're actually starting at the proxy, and we don't even need to enter that. So setup is completely automatic on Nomad Web. So without further ado, let's get further into Nomad Web. Just want to give a quick overview of the technology behind it. So Nomad is based on a common code base of the Notes client. We take that code for Nomad Web, and using scripting, we were able to cross-compile that into WebAssembly It's a JavaScript bytecode format that was formalized last year. And we combine that with traditional web constructs of HTML, JavaScript, and we're doing this as a progressive web app. And I'll speak to each of those items just in a minute. We're supporting Chrome, Firefox, and Edge. And as you can see here on the screen, it is a simple discussion app that looks pixel for pixel what you'd see in the other Nomad clients. So WebAssembly is a new standard and it was standardized last year. So of interest is how we draw onto a canvas in the browser. You've probably heard from some of the other presentations, Nomad's been a journey. Our Android port is using OpenGL, and we leveraged the work that the Android port did in order to present Nomad Web's UI through WebGL. So the render in Nomad Web is a mixture of WebGL drawn on a canvas, mixed in with React and material elements for common OS type controls that we normally get from the operating system, like list boxes, comma boxes, and all of our dialogues will be ported over to the presented through a more modern React material UI layer. So progressive web apps, we're doing these across our different web applications. Verse is going to be, or is a PWA, and Nomad Web is as well. And this does a number of things, but it allows for an offline experience and a very reactive interaction of a web application. It caches all of the web artifacts, which allows for the offline experience, and manages updates to any of those artifacts as they change. And we started off right off the bat. We're a secure application. PWAs need to work over HTTPS, and our WebSocket connections need to be WSS as well. So in terms of some requirements, what Nomad Web adds to the mix is a Nomad Web Proxy, and as I described in earlier slides, that allows us to connect over WebSockets and through to the Domino server using NRPC. And at this point, I'm going to switch over to demo mode and show you Nomad Web running in Chrome as a PWA, as well as Firefox. Let me stop the presentation and switch to sharing. Okay, so sorry about that. So I'm going to start off for the first time opening Nomad Web against this particular endpoint to show the first time experience. So right there was a challenge against the Nomad Web Proxy. I supplied my identity and password, and at this point it maps my identity to a Domino user. From that Domino user, it is extracting my ID from the vault and now challenging me for my password. And that, okay, pardon me. And I apologize. I went. This is my personal one, not my demo one. We'll go with that instead. Okay. anyway, that did a first time setup. I'm going to switch to another endpoint that's already been set up. So what you're seeing is the workspace. This whole area here is a canvas that we're painting with GL. Up here is a menu, which is done through React. And the UI that is shown is React. And I can go through and find different applications. So the first application I wanted to show, and let me start with my demo environment for that. So I'm starting Chrome as a progressive web application. Which I previously installed. So from Chrome, there's a choice to do as a progressive web app, and that puts icons on the workspace as well as shows the UI as a solo web page. So the first application I wanted to show was a mail file. We will support any applications including the mail file, and we have a look of the mail files you can see in BASIC. We support type ahead here. So just did a lookup and autocomplete there. And we support cut and paste and copy and things like that. So I can select text and copy it. Currently, we're supporting copy and paste within the Nomad web application. We have on our backlog to make it work with the operating system as well. So next I wanted to show a slightly more complex form. Internally we track bugs in an SPR system. And this particular document has a bunch of different form constructs. It has an embedded view. As you can see, as I'm going around this demo, we're quite responsive. These are all server-based applications, and they're as fast as the other clients. So the next application I wanted to show was something a little different than the traditional three-pane look. And that's Theo's wine tasting application. And I also wanted to point out that, compare that to the next client. So as you can see, it's pretty much pixel for pixel, the same look and feel. And finally, the last thing I wanted to show was, okay, I don't have that up. I wanted to show just attachment interaction. I'll just speak to that. So we are supporting attachments and downloading attachments, and there's a little bit of magic behind that. So attachments are something that we download through the nRPC protocol, and to interface with the browser, we actually download them locally to our virtual file system and then trigger a blob download of the browser. The interactions you have with attachments are very similar to what you have in a browser when you're downloading any other thing, file, and it would bring you to your download folder, or you can open it. So that's kind of a whirlwind tour. At this point, I'd like to open it up to Q&A and let you ask questions to myself and the broader team on Nomad Web or any of the other Nomad clients. So Brian, do we have questions from the audience?
Yes, some of them are being answered.
Okay.
We go through the last one that was not answered. Sorry, it keeps scrolling on me. Can Nomad support proxy support also be used in the Notes client, not just Nomad Web? I'm not sure if that's something that you can answer.
This is Andrew Davis. So our plan is to deliver that functionality in iOS, Android, and Nomad Web. We'll have to consider that, but right now it's those clients as mentioned.
Okay. Some of these are being answered, so I'm just going through the ones that are not.
So can we actually, Doug, can you actually, the ones in the chat, can we go through and answer them for everybody?
Yeah.
Please.
Okay. I'm just scrolling through now.
I'll begin with the top one. Carson asked if the responsive application changes, will they be supported on Windows Mac OS clients? And the answer is yes, those changes were made to be supported on all the different platforms that are running on applications.
Okay, so there's a question about using the Nomad Web client as a component of the web application. So that's something that we've heard from our customers. It will not be in the first release. We are considering how we can support something like that, but not initially. Someone asked about, can you drag and drop from the main view into a folder? So I assume that's for like an inbox file that currently is not working in the beta, but we will have it work in the general release.
And so perhaps if you have a question that has not been answered or there's a new question, maybe now's a good time to either put it into the chat and we'll take back those questions as they come in. Otherwise, feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hello, everybody. So what about fidelity around desktop policies and things like that? Will Nomad for web browsers will fully support all of that?
Take that or?
Sure, Andrew, I'll let you take that.
So I mean, so the core parts of policy that affects the internals will work. We're working on a partnership. I think you saw Max presented what we've done on iOS and Android for our client management strategy. You'll see a similar solution in the future. We're not ready to make an announcement yet, but in general, you know, the core parts of policies that affect the internals of Notes will be supported. There are many things in policy, though. There's like the ability to run third-party applications, hook into external things about file systems. Obviously, a lot of those will not be supported, but the core ability to change quotas and different policies specific to the client, those would work. But we're really looking to manage it the same way that we manage Nomad iOS and Android longer term.
Thank you.
One other thing I'd point out is while we demoed today, you guys saw the Notes ID password prompt, we really are heading in the direction of letting the web authentication really be the experience our end users want. We've heard that back with the roundtable feedback yesterday. It's in our plan. It's just a matter of when do we get the first drop out versus do we get all the features you guys want. So, you know, we're actively working to make sure the SAML support as well as the Domino TOTP authentication is sufficient to unlock your ID vault in the future.
Here, does authentication require a Notes ID file be included? Doug, would you like to answer that one?
Right. So just following on what Andrew just said. So internally, we do require Notes ID, and that's surfaced at the moment. We do require a vault to be set up in the environment, but our long-term goal is to bury the ID behind other authentication methods, such that it's a implementation detail, not something the user is worrying about or even thinking about. Eric Anson asked about beta version requiring a V12 Domino server, and the answer is no. The only addition to your environment would be the Nomad Web Proxy to be installed and set up in order to use Nomad Web.
Guys, I don't have a question, but I just want to congratulate all of you because I think you did a fabulous job getting Nomad out, and we're all looking forward to getting it for the web as well. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Theo. So Art asked about whether it will support encryption keys. So if you mean encryption keys, if you want to elaborate on that, but yeah, if you can elaborate on the specific question. Right. Yes, I'm not sure how to answer the question. I might hit Max on this. So at a fundamental technical level, we have the Notes ID, and you know, we support encryption and everything we can. What I'm not aware of is what we've exposed at the UI level for some of those things. Max, can you speak to that for an iOS?
I think that. Sure. I think you just hit the nail on the head. I mean, we support all the little encryption that you're already used to with the keys being in your Notes ID. So you'll be able to send encrypted mail and access all sorts of different forms of encryption that you know to be within your Domino application today.
Right. So Stefan asked about hiding design elements for the Nomad client. So there is a hide check for mobile on various things that can be done. Max, you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. There's a hide check for mobile, and that's easy thing to use for hiding things like columns and certain fields and actions. Of course, you can also use the app platform creatively, so you can use app platform specific to know what platform that you're currently executing or the application is currently executing, and make decisions based off of that as well.
And there's also an add function to check phone versus tablet as well. Correct, Max?
So the app platform specific will return as part of the test list either tablet or phone. So you could make decisions based off of the form factor fairly easily.
Thank you.
Yeah, so hide when mobile specifically, that is targeted for the mobile devices that Nomad is running on.
So we're going to ask whether a browser is a mobile device, which is an interesting question. So there are some choices that Nomad made for mobile based on a form factor. And for those types of choices, Nomad Web is not considering itself a mobile device because our form factor is larger. But there are some other choices that it's made that are simplifications that are actually improvements that we will do. So it's not a black and white answer. But, we're trying to take the parts that make sense, but strictly speaking, we're more a desktop experience from a form factor, as well as keyboard and mouse sort of experience. Max, you want to take the pen question?
Sure. So there are different places you can go with the pen. But the feature that we are working on that we have in our backlog today is supporting signing. So for a user to be able to actually sign a field within your download application within your form and have that saved. And so there's all sorts of use cases for that. And it's actually one of the items that's voted very highly in the AHA idea portal. So of course, we are going to be working on that. It's something that's getting good focus.
And following up on that, just as a plug, AHA is a great place for you to provide feedback for us, either new ideas or to vote up things other customers or business partners have suggested. Also, if you have not signed up for the beta for Nomad Web, please do. I don't have the link. There's a SurveyMonkey link for that. Is there a place to report bugs? So, Art, is that a question for iOS and Android, or just in general?
Doug, can you guys demo the reported defect in Nomad Web? I think that'd be very helpful for people to understand if they participate in the data.
Let me grab the screen. Okay, so in Nomad Web as well as iOS and Android, on the main menu, there's a reported defect choice. What that'll do is it'll send an email to HCL with tag for the particular product. It collects some logs to help us determine what's happening, and the user can enter what they were doing and then send it to us. On our side, we will receive a notification that the report came in. We triage the information and create backlog tasks or identify current issues for the reports that come in. And I just had a colleague share.
And I just posted in the chat there the link to sign up for the beta program.
Beat me to it. Thank you. Max, you want to speak to integration with other apps on our device?
Sure. So right now there is not so much that you can do with being able to extend or integrate like suggested here, Brian. But it is something that we are considering adding. Of course, there's limitations in the mobile space. iOS is fairly locked down, but there are likely some sensible ways of implementing extension points and allowing for information to be shared between applications. So it is something that we plan on looking into. of course, if an attachment is saved within the document, you can share those attachments on iOS to other applications. The user just has to use the share function there.
Hello all, we're within the last 2 minutes of this session. If you have any more questions, please post them now. If we're unable to answer them, all of these questions will also be posted at a later date.
PDF as an example. So what we're going to do generally on import and export questions is we're going to take a lot of the work the Notes team's been doing to support better in import export. We're going to move a lot of the server over time on Domino, so it's available to our mobile clients as well as to Nomad Web. So look for work there in the future. It probably won't be in the very first release, but it's on the backlog. We're well aware of the types of integrations you guys need from those mobile applications to those different types. So that would be the end user integration, and then for import export. And then once we have it there, yes, we could make it available via Lotus Script agents as well to hand it back to you. So it's in the backlog. So I'll ask a question of the audience, and people can respond in the chat. From people who are still on the call here, how many of you are going to join a hosted beta and try this out yourselves when it comes out shortly? I think, Doug, we said within the month, right?
Yes.
Okay. And by the way, we'll take your names down from this because we're going to keep doing the same thing. The people that give us feedback are going to get more access to things earlier. So let us know. Thanks. Thank you guys for participating today.
That we've reached the end time of our session. We appreciate everyone joining, showing us in Nomad, Nomad Web. I hope this has been informative for you. We're still getting feedback in the chat.
Yes, so Notes URL parameters is something that's very important. One of the key things people ask about embedding in other web applications, but the key ability to launch from existing business logic from email and other things is what we really need to address. We still work on Nomad Web to get to Notes URL support. I think, Max, where are you guys on the iOS side? Do you have some limited URL support to launch?
Notes links, but they're asking for parameterized Notes URLs. Yeah. We do not have that support yet, but it is something that I believe is fairly highly voted in the AHA ideation portal. So the more support that gets, the more you're going to see that discussed here in our presentations.
So Carson, are you looking for the parameterized Notes URL that we built with Notes widgets in the standard client, or are you looking for beyond that?
To Notes URL, to put a Notes URL and opens the UI form and the Notes client and passes some parameters to some business logic to parameterize the UI. Because currently you only have a static URL that we can open.
Yeah, so there actually Notes already supports parameterized URLs on Notes standard. We can send you the details. We did it with the widgets work back in 801. So you can open up a view and do a full text search. You can open up a view and parameterize. You can open up and create documents, parameterized URL. There's a whole series of parameterized URL support in the core code. And our intention would be to bring that forward into Nomad Web and the mobile clients. So let's have that discussion. Let's review that spec offline if that works, or if you're looking for something more than just that.
Well, thank you everyone for attending. I look forward to working with you in the future as we bring this to beta and to market. Thank you for your feedback.